Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Human Experience Podcast. You already know who it is. It is your girl, Rashida, aka Righteous Sun. And on today's episode, I'm really excited to talk about this one. I think it ties into all of the topics that we've had, is aligned living, finding purpose and thriving in uncertainty. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, share with family and friends, and those who you feel will vibe with this message. With that being said, let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited for this episode because it is like the last episode of the season that we've created, and I really do love this topic. I think it's tied into the theme when I've talked to like my friends and other people who also do this work and are really focused on the well-being and the holistic side of things. But before I do that, of course, I can't do it by myself. I have invited on some amazing practitioners, amazing souls and beings, Joanne, Fisher, and Maria. I didn't give your last name, Maria. It's just what I see on the screen. So, like, forgive me, but they are some amazing practitioners that you can find on the Hira site. And so I can't do a great job in terms of introduction. So I always want to leave it to the practitioner because I always feel like you guys can do the best in introducing yourself and what you offer through the Hira site and to people all over the world. So, Joanne, I'll start with you. Please share what it is that you do.
So, I help new and expectant parents to heal their physical issues, their stress, their anxiety, their traumas, so that they can be fully present and bonded with their babies. So, I am a body talk practitioner, birth keeper, infant sleep educator, conscious parenting coach, holistic birth educator. So, I work in all realms from fertility to empty nesting, but also
Mm.
working with any adult because we were all babies and we all had early experiences and traumas that have shaped who we are. So my passion is really working with our earliest childhood experiences and how 85% of our brain growth happens in the first 3 years of life. We are wired, we are created, we are imprinted in the womb, in our conception stories, in our first years of life of who we are physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so my passion is really working with those earliest experiences to repair that in parents and adults of all ages, but really preventing the issues with working with babies right from the start, that if we have a generation that's held, loved, supported, that they'll change the world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was great. Maria, go ahead, share.
My name is Maria Sposito, and I am a psychic healer, wholeness trainer, and a consultant. I more or less help people to create awareness, release, healing, and revolutionary change using the beautiful modalities of hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, neurolinguistic programming, and I'm a master coach as well. So I'm a trainer and a practitioner on both sides. So I actually help people to not only train and utilize the tools themselves, but I also help them, guide them through those releases through various services. Coming from, we've all have a story, I have gone through trauma, just like Joanne mentioned. So I use those beautiful tools coupled in with numerology. So on the spiritual side, I also use my intuitive gifts of psychic. I am an empath and numerology. So spirit talks to me with numbers. So numbers have been very prevalent my whole life. So using those tools, in conjunction to my certified credentials, I help people create those, one-on-one and group settings and soon to be retreats, destination retreats internationally. So,
Great. Thank you
yeah,
so much.
thank you.
I think this conversation is going to go well because both of your offerings tie into this conversation when we talk about finding our purpose. And Joanne, when you speak on your offerings and what it is that you offer people, it starts from young to old. And when children are born, of course, their only purpose really is to just show up, right? But it just depends on who they're showing up to, what the environment looks like. And then, of course, that leads into, what it is that parents have, like whether it's teaching them certain things, expectations, values, morals, that they slowly start to adapt and learn and understand, whether it's the parents' expectations or maybe like things that they have been passed down through generations. And then as they get older, they start to create their own identity. I have children, so like I'm noticing that like whatever I expected for them is totally not what I'm seeing. And I'm totally okay with that. I love to see that they are growing into their own unique way, which then teaches me that, like, okay, well, what does like purpose look like? Because then as we get to adult life, we start to think, what is our purpose? And then we put so much pressure on what that should be. Like, are having that pressure of what we should be, and then like what our purpose is in general with the choices we've made, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Go
with
ahead.
that, from the conscious parenting framework, we look at being the gardener versus being the carpenter. We're not there to shape or build
Mm,
them into a specific thing we want. We're there to be the gardener, to create that safe space for them to thrive no matter what they end up growing into.
thank you. And Maria, what is your thought in terms of the people that you have met and your own experiences in terms of finding your purpose? Because you deal more with the adults, and perhaps maybe they're running into that moment in their life where they want to pivot in their career, and they're trying to start to understand that maybe what their purpose was is not what it is now.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, yes, I work with demographically more adults, our generation up to like, 55, 60. But I also work with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs tend to be the ones that I attract. So, you know what? I utilize the phenomenal tool of numerology, astro. So I'm not as versed in astrology as I am with numerology, but I find, using that tool is such an awareness tool that even for myself, when I pivoted into the business that I'm in right now, after going through some chaotic trauma a few years back, it was aligning with these tools, of that helped me realize my life's path, my destiny, which is associated to career, and aligning using the tool of numerology, which is more on the vibrational side, and understanding that these numbers that are associated to you in your natal chart, in your codes, your day of birth, your given name, your birth certificate name, all have numbers associated. And I have found that using this tool, and aligning in that space of, once you know that you have that awareness, you're able to create that shift and change. But as entrepreneurs and even as career oriented people, we're the ones that tend to hold ourselves back. So for me, being a very logical and having to learn to embrace my intuition coupled into my brilliance of my logic and finding that balance, when you have that awareness of who you truly are at that soul level, you know, it's easier to make those changes. And it's sometimes we're the ones that hold ourselves back from making those changes and aligning to our purpose, in life. So I'm a very tool oriented kind of person. So that is kind of what's helped me. And I utilize with guiding my clients to aligning to that, within that space as well.
Thank you. Then this ties into another question, as both of you guys have shared. How, I'm going to ask
Preface for body
Joanne.
talk. Could I actually preface something a little bit?
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure.
So, with body talk, we look at the analogy I use most is that we are like a light bulb coming into this world bright and shining, and then the world just starts putting all of its layers of conditioning and trauma and all of its stuff like layers of paint. So, we're always just working to strip away. So, one of our main core elements is individuation, the state of not being divided, of getting back to our truth, getting back to our core essence. And so, with all ages, all issues, like we're always just trying to get back to our own authenticity. And if we have secure attachment, that makes that so much easier because we're not stuck in those poor patterns, but working at the level of the matrix. But
Mm,
one of the main areas is I work with the people pretty much all the time is that if we are on our soul's path and we're living in our purpose and then the life, we don't have to hit so many roadblocks to redirect us to send us back to our path.
mm,
So the people that I work with that are living their passion and living their purpose, they live in so much more ease physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because the universe isn't trying to redirect them to where they need to go.
mm.
Mhm.
Often a big part of what I work day in and day out is actually helping people figure that out. And so I created what I've dubbed Section 5 of our BiTalk protocol chart, which I just made it up about 8 years ago when I read Dolores Cannon's book, Convoluted Universe, Volume 4, and all of her past life regression work. And it reshaped every way I work with all of our experiential stuff and with the spirit baby work, and knowing that we come into this life with a passion, with a purpose, and we get what we get for a reason so that we can be here and, put down the path that we're supposed to be on. I wouldn't do the work I do if I wasn't an unwanted, resented conception and didn't feel safe and worthy in the womb. So my passion is helping babies in the womb to feel safe and wanted and connected. We
Mm,
get our soul really just takes us where we need to be based off of a lot of our traumas, right?
mm.
Those pains become our passion.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. To ask another question, then, what are the tools that I'm going to say parents, but I also say adults because when I think of parents, they look after their children. But I also think as adults, even if you don't have children, and even if you do, we're still finding ways to look after ourselves, right? We're still finding ways to look after our inner child. So I love how you mentioned before in terms of we're not supposed to be the carpenter, but the gardener. I love that analogy because first of all, I love plants. And on top of that, it's such a beautiful way to understand the human body because we're all nature in some way, of course, that is perfect. You want to tend to the garden. So when we talk about that purpose driven life, that those two words, I feel like could cause people a lot of stress because they're feeling as if they are running to something or they need to speed there really fast, especially with society. Stopped recording. The question is that I want to know is what are the tools that adults can use to help tend to their garden and not be so hard on themselves? Because we've been taught that you got to keep going and there should never be this moment of rest, even though we're now learning in a time where rest sometimes is not that we don't know which direction we need to go. It just means that we need to pause for a second in order to recalibrate and realign, and then we can keep moving, right? Our journey is a long journey. And I do believe that whether you're, trekking in the mountains or wherever, you still need a moment of rest before you can get back up and have enough energy to go forward. So I'm going to go to Joanne first because I love how you spoke on like the child. And I think I truly do believe that if we work on children at a younger age, especially if as adults, we know exactly the things that we need to work on. How can we then transfer that to our children or to children, whether you're a teacher or anything like that, so that they can thrive as they get older and they're not kind of stuck like most adults are in these times right now?
Yeah, I got a great answer for you. But one thing that popped to my mind as you were speaking was Bob Proctor's main words of slow down to speed up, right? That when we take that time to stop and to be present, then everything goes faster, everything goes easier. But on that whole thing, I guess the biggest piece is the mirror principle that our children are mirroring our own, and everybody around us are always mirroring our own stuff. They are showing to us whenever we have got conflicts, whenever we get triggered, whenever we get aggravated by anything, that they're showing us our old wounds, they're showing us the patterns, they're showing us the way we need to heal. And so, as much as I work on children, the best results I get is by working with the parents so that they can be attuned and regulated and present for their kids. My own story was when my infancy was pregnancy, birth, infancy was amazing experiences for me. But as soon as I had a toddler, I didn't know how to deal with his big emotions, and I would shut down and pull away. And then he would act out for more and more attention. And then I would pull away. It's like, okay, take this kid for a while. And then it got really bad that they're like, you got to rein this kid in or he's going to be a psychopath. And I ended up parenting in ways, more abusive ways than I didn't want to do. And it got to this tipping point where, we were both crying and I couldn't do it anymore. And that's where I found body talk and I started doing the work to heal my own emotional intelligence and being able to tune in and know what I was feeling to regulate my own emotions so that I could actually regulate him and show up for him in the way he needed. And it didn't matter 6 months. My sister asked if I medicated him because he changed so much, because he didn't have to act out for that. And so it's just that beautiful way of that all we can do, all we can change is ourselves. And it's just having that patience and that space to be present with ourselves and to always be curious of like, why is this getting me upset? And, consciousness is all that's needed for healing. Once we're aware of the problem, then we can heal it. Body talk is consciousness based medicine. It's all about just giving us the information we need so that we can make those shifts and changes for ourselves.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Maria, I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well, especially in terms of some of the work that you do, whether that's numerology or psychic intuition and connecting with them in that way. I love how, in some way, both offerings tie into each other. You're very much, Joanne, about checking in with the body and really doing looking at the intricacies of it, which I love doing those things myself, but I know for so many people it could be very foreign, especially if they've detached from the body in some way, to find ways to come back in a gentle way so it's not such a quick, can be overwhelming for people. So I love how you express those pieces of it. And then it makes me think of you, Maria, and connecting to a deeper part of what I feel is the spirituality piece. I feel like for so many, because I do the same work as well, Maria, is that when you connect to that higher self and you connect to either loved ones or your spirit guides, they're able to sort of, I guess I could say, like, give it a clear understanding for the things that we're not sure of. We're trying to figure it out. Then we come in with that clarity to help them maybe process it more. And then I feel like, okay, now that I can process it, now I want to go to Joanne and be like, okay, now how can I implement that? How can I put it into action? Right. So I would love to hear, Maria, on your side, how that looks.
Yeah. So being a very tool-oriented person, piggybacking to what Joanne said, perception is projection. So it's doing the inner work and being aware that what you see in others is within yourself, and it's kind of getting to the root cause of those, of that, that presenting problem, that will enlighten you and allow you to align to whatever it is that you're seeking. So in this case, if you're seeking that, your alignment to your life's purpose, or you're feeling stuck in that space, or you're not quite sure, it's, yes, using the higher self. So I love numerology, and so spirit talks to me in numbers, not only for myself but with my clients. So knowing the vibrational meanings of those numbers, or if I'm asking, or if I'm going through, say, a hypnotherapy session and I'm calling in and channeling in my clients' guides, it's really being very, I find, it's knowing and being very specific with the questions that you're asking. That's such a clear key thing, especially when you're connecting with, your higher self or your guides, is being very specific and chunking down to what is it really that you're asking. And for me, I find that there's times where we could be in our headspace, at least for myself. So I find that when I'm not able to, say, connect at those higher levels, and I'm trying to rationalize and use my analytical, my left brain mind, I'll use the tool of a pendulum. So if there's something that I need to get, whether that's coming from an unconscious, subconscious level, or from my higher self, regardless of what the topic is, and I find I'm in my headspace, I'll utilize the pendulum. So that's kind of where I started in this space. So that's kind of my go-to when I revert back to those, being in that analytical space. So I find that using tools like I said, numerology, or using the pendulum and just kind of clearing yourself. I always have to, before I connect with, with my guides, my higher self, I always have to be in a meditative state. So I'll put myself in a self-hypnosis trance, clear my energy, and then go into those connective spaces to be able to. And this is something that, going through, for example, whether somebody's coming to me for a hypnosis session or a breakthrough session, these are tools that I even teach my clients, because and even through my YouTube channels, being able to share these tools that people could utilize on their own, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer. So that's really something that has helped me. And I only train things that I know that has worked for me or have worked for other clients, and staying in that space of integral, with my clients. I won't refer something that I haven't either tried or utilized myself. So I find that pendulum connection, getting into that space of self hypnosis in that meditative space, really, or, connecting with somebody that could help guide you to finding out truly what it is that you're meant to be, using a tool like numerology, which has transformed my life, and has given me a lot of clarity. Lots of options.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for sharing that. Now, okay, so I love everything everybody's saying. And so now this makes me think of another question. We're all three moms. And for new moms, whether you're new or old, it doesn't really matter. But when you become a mom, you take on another identity. And what I notice with that is that when you take on that new identity that's very foreign, then for whatever reason, we forget our old identity, right? Now, I know we all shift and change, but when we take on that new one, we're so hyper focused on being whatever it is that we're supposed to be, right? Society puts all this pressure, and then and we take the pressure, we put it on ourselves. And then in that moment, then we have those thoughts of nostalgic thoughts of remembering old parts of ourselves that we're missing. And recently, now that my kids are getting a little older and, I'm getting older as well, that I start to realize that in those moments when, we're having our children, it's almost, and what I'm learning through so many people that I've spoken to is that when we're even carrying our child and we're going through that conception stage, that our body almost doesn't become our body anymore. Now we're just a vessel carrying a soul. And then in those moments, fragments of ourselves get, they're all over the place because our body is now focused in on this one, this beautiful soul that we're about to bring into the world. And then we give birth. And then we're like, oh, okay, there's this sigh of relief. There's this energetic release that happens. But still in that process, still fragments of ourselves are now just floating around. And now we're focusing on this new identity. And in that process, whether we go through postpartum or we don't, and maybe sometimes we don't realize it, we then start to have moments where we're split into two, right? And I feel like that's where the stress comes in. As moms, we all get stressed at some point and we have to find ways to realign ourselves. And my question in this piece of where I'm going with it is, with both of your offerings and what it is that you do, it also sounds like you help with allowing women to recognize those fragments and bring them back to whole. I know in a lot of different cultures, after they have babies, they do the wrapping ceremony to help bring in the spirit back again. But I mean, I live in Toronto, we live in the Western world. That doesn't happen, right? You just have your baby and they push you back out into the world and they say, figure it out. And in those moments, we feel alone, right? We don't know who to go to. We're experiencing these things and we feel either shame or we just don't know, right? So how do you currently help women who are first time moms? Because I know, Joanne, for sure, you must explain a lot of what could happen to prepare them to at least they can recognize it. So I would love to hear your thoughts on it and also how you help women go through that process.
Okay, I actually offer what I call the complete prenatal package, where I work, well, even before that, I have the preconception package to help them through that journey into that. But once we're into the pregnancy stage, I work with them a 90-minute session at least once a month. We do prenatal education, birth preparation. We do an infant sleep preparation class so that they're able to transition into postpartum easily. We get everything we need to do through the birth process, working with both mom, the birthing person. I'm working with some surrogates right now as well. That is amazing to help the dads connect with this baby as we bring them in, the whole process all the way through. And so I spend a lot of time. I get to really know these mothers, these women very well, everyone in the whole family. I help the older siblings prepare to be dethroned and be supported in all of that. I do doula work and birth work. And so I'm with them through that entire process. I knew I am their advocate. I help them prepare, help them to find their whole way through. And then postpartum, I do an immediate session within 24 hours to help with the physical, mental, emotional recovery and make sure everything's working well, if breastfeeding's a plan and everything with that. And then another session, a full birth debrief session within 2 weeks, where we actually go through and heal and clear and realign with everything through that birth process, because birth changes both mother and child.
Mm.
If it's Kensho or Satori, if it's through suffering or if it's through that big aha moment, birth will forever change us. And even if it's a 6-week miscarriage, that moment will always change us. It'll always be an impact to us. And then then they get one more session to wrap things up at that point, and then I have a full postpartum package where I work with them all the way through and support. So I have clients I've worked with that I started working with at like 12, 14 weeks conception or gestation, and their children are now 5. And I've worked with those children every month of their life for their entire existence. And life just keeps throwing new things at them, right? That there's, it's like, okay, well, you're kindergarten now. BITOC's taking us into helping them manage friendships, right? There's always new skills, always new milestones, always new conflicts and learnings to support these children through. And yeah, it's a tremendous process of really helping the parents and child to stay really deeply connected with each other and have that understanding. And with body talk, with the yes no questioning, it's like I remember when I first learned body talk, it took me to an experience where it took me to an event, to the location of my friend's basement suite, and it took me to my son's emotions of joy and excitement and then anger. And I'm like, my friend had been babysitting my kid a week earlier. And so I'm like, hey, did something happen with my son when he was there that last week? He's like, yeah, he got down into the tenant's basement suite. And I was a little harsh on him. So it was actually like ratted him out and told me what happened, even though I didn't know. And so we're able to really, get that problem process, those experiences, and get that deeper understanding and know where these kids are at, because our kids often can't tell us what's going on, even if they are capable, especially our young ones. They just don't have the words or the ability to tell us what's going on. And so to be that translator, to be that conduit for that communication from babies right at conception all the way through, to get that deeper understanding of what's going on inside oneself, is really profound.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Maria, what's your thoughts?
So, for me, my perspective is always, where it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So the way I help people and guide people through various forms of journeys. So if they're looking to release, if they're looking to heal, they're looking to create awareness, alignment, and that revolutionary change, I provide, like, so hypnosis and hypnotherapy is kind of like my go-to. I love it. I'm able to really channel in my clients' guides through one-on-one sessions. So if it's a one-off session, that somebody that might be nervous about trying something like that. And I'm also about customizing. So I always customize based off the client's needs. So even though I may have kind of set packages, intuitively I'll know that once we get into the journey, it'll help me to kind of unfold and really hone in specifically. So whether that's a one-off hypnosis session, I also do timeline therapy. So timeline therapy is we all have a timeline. So we could go and regress all the way back from past lives genealogically. So tapping into Joanne, what you do. I've known people that have been impacted through things that they experience within the womb. So timeline therapy taps into that past life, taps into if you're in the womb, it taps into the current life. And the most dramatic change that, the way the unconscious mind works, we are actually from ages 0 to 7, this is the imprint stage. So this is where, children at this age are so susceptible of absorbing everything they're experiencing. And unconsciously, this is how we're processing information into our adulthood. So again, timeline therapy is very specific to really getting into those past life traumas, and it's targeting negative emotions, phobias, and it's very specific. Your limiting decisions, limiting beliefs that you hold on to unconsciously. So I provide those types of releases, really focusing on those negative emotions, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt that we hold on to unconsciously. And then, also utilizing breakthrough journeys. So if somebody has gone through, my forte is trauma. So those are the types of people that I tend to attract. Now, trauma could look very differently from person to person. What one person has experienced and how have they experienced that and hold that at an unconscious level could be very different from another person. So going through a full 4 session breakthrough journey, the first session you're experiencing is the exploratory. So we're actually going in, it's a questionnaire we go through 3 hours long, and we go through in depth of getting, I'm more or less eliciting your strategies, your values, so there's a lot of things that I'm doing, but this is actually the first portion of going through a breakthrough. And then the 3 other sessions are actual intervention. And that's where, again, working with your guides with permission and being able to customize based on that exploratory session to create that release, awareness, and that revolutionary change and healing. And then for people that are looking for more of those spiritual numerology psychic readings, those are the great tools for somebody that's looking for answers. So somebody who's looking for their life path or understanding, okay, am I right? Am I in the right position to and aligned with my why I'm here? My life path, my destiny. Am I expressing myself to the ability that I can in my career, in how I'm showing up in the world and servicing the world, and understand based on your own soul codes. So for somebody that just wants readings like that, which is coupled in, again, it's a psychic reading, but it's also looking at your soul code. So I have 3 packages. So depending on how deep you want to go, then I have various packages. So for me, it's all about the journey. So depending on what specifically you're looking for, um, I tailor those journeys of, release, trauma release, or even just awareness and guidance. It's lots of fun. Lots of fun.
Thank you so much, Maria. And thank you, Joanne. I love how you guys, it almost like tied into each other, like the work that you do, which then makes me think of after hearing everything you guys have just shared, what you're saying to everyone and even to myself, which I know this, but it sounds like your journey is your purpose. I think what happens is we do think that our purpose is outside. It's this thing, whether it's the career, it's the family, it's something that's like external, tangible that you can like put in your hands. And then that's where the stress comes in because they're like, well, I've achieved whatever it is. And yet for some reason, there's something still missing, which then means I got to come to one of you to say, well, what is that thing that is missing, right? To say like I'm not really sure if I achieved whatever it is. I thought this was my purpose of achieving this, but it didn't give me that fulfillment that I was looking for. What could you say to somebody out there who feels that way?
The thing that came to my mind was one of the coaches I worked with. If you're green, you're growing. If you're ripe, you're rotting. Right? That we're never there is no destination. One of my biggest heroes and who I intend to be is Dr. Gladys McGreary, the founder of holistic medicine. She started public speaking in her 90s, and at 103, one of the most recent interviews I've seen with her, she was talking about her 10-year plan at 103. Like, she is not done yet. She's still like practicing consulting physician at 103. And that's what I strive to be, that I'm never going to be done. One of the other analogies from my old teacher was, life is like a bicycle. You're only on balance when you're moving forward. That we can't, we don't really, we have to have that destination. Otherwise we're just adrift at sea. We need to have that GPS, plugged in, that we have to have somewhere we're going. Otherwise we're just floating around aimlessly. So we need to have that idea of kind of that bigger picture. And that's like, I'm working with people empty nesting and people retiring and the people that are dying and they don't have a purpose anymore. That having some, like one of the guys I was running an off a promo here recently, and he came and did 3 sessions from my church, and it was all about how he's retired and how he needed to reconnect with his passion and his purpose, is what his body, all his teeth grinding and jaw pain was telling him. That's what the jaw represents, is that ability to take a bite out of life. And so of uncovering all of those different things, that it's like he's a retired teacher and he needs to disrupt the education system. It's like, your job isn't done yet. You got to get back out there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, Maria.
Yeah, I have so for me, I'm a quote kind of person as well. So the one thing that I share with everyone, I repeat it to my kids, and especially to my clients is be open to everything and attached to nothing. That's a Wayne Dyer. So Wayne Dyer is one of my many teachers as well. And if you could actually consciously practice that, be open to everything and attach. I think as humans, we tend to have attachments, and that could be to our detriment at times. And it's letting go of that, attachment to outcomes, attachment to people, attachment to things, and just, allowing yourself and knowing that everything's happening for us, not to us, so being able to really embrace that, not judge it, not have, letting go of expectations. I'll say my beautiful life partner, Scott, has taught me the beautiful concept of not having expectations, and that's kind of the basis of when we went into this relationship years ago was let's not have those typical expectations within relationships. So I found that very interesting. I'm like, well, how do you do that in the beginning? It's now filtered into all areas of life where if you let go of that judgment and expectation, that criticism, number one, of self, and then eventually learn how to do that with the external, you'll be able to really connect naturally to your life's purpose, to why you are here. What are the things that trigger that inner child that, when that get you excited, especially if somebody that's going through retirement. My dad passed away 2 years ago, very unexpectedly at age 68 from a massive heart attack. And literally saw him the day before, next day, and no health problems. So that was a very big, big pivot point among other things that was going on at that time. And when I look at my mother today, because this happened in April of 2023, transitioning and looking at my mother's life and looking at how life has changed, it's interesting to see people's patterns come out and how people get into that comfort zone. And even though she still is living life the same, but it's different in the sense of, dad's not here. So she's still, and I keep saying to her, Mom, you need to get out. You need to find your purpose because, you're 68 years old. You still have years ahead of you. Find what it is. The house, the cleaning is still going to be there when you get home, but you really need to align to what it is. And I think we get into that comfort zone. Us as humans get into this comfort zone of feeling comfortable. And sometimes, comfort and growth do not hang out at the bar together. That was a quote from my trainer. They don't hang out the bar together. So if you're comfortable, you're not growing. So it's really honing in, stretching yourself, and moving forward in that space of, what sparks that inner child. What are you passionate about? What is it that you love? And even just sharing that with my kids. I have two teenage girls, and one of them is so aligned and knows her purpose and is so aligned with that, my little artist. And then my eldest is kind of floating through life trying to figure out why she's here. And I think technology plays a very big role in that, especially for the younger generation. But that's another that's another podcast, another story. But yeah, so it's, what is it that sparks you? And that's what I say to them. What gets you excited, And you don't have the programming that your parents have. So, if you're able to find what that passion is, at 16 and 14 or even, 40, 50, 60, it's aligning to that. What sparks that interest and following that and listening to that and letting go of the ego and saying, okay, you know what, thank you for that awareness, but
Go ahead. Joanne?
Maria gave me the biggest insight. One of the areas I work with a lot in the soul's journey work, when I work with people, is often coming to that question: when you were 2, 3, 4 years old, what were you passionate about? What were you alive with? Because when I'm doing my birth work, often when I have babies that are overdue, and I offer a no induction guarantee because I just work with the babies to clear their resistance and their fear, and then they come. And so if people come to me when they're overdue, I just usually have to work with that. And often it's because these babies haven't crossed the veil yet, and they're still connected to their truth. They're still connected to their soul's journey and purpose. And it's so big and it's so overwhelming. It's scary for them. They're like, screw that. I'm not coming. I'm not doing that. And often I find that with the spirit babies I work with preconception, that it's just too big of an ask. They're like, no, I don't want to come. And I help them through that, and then they come, right? And so often when we look at when we were just a small, preschooler, whatever we were really passionate about, to love, to play, as long as we, weren't shut down with a whole lot of trauma, and we were in a safe space where we could play and we could explore, and then that is, our babies are still connected to it at that stage, and they know who they are. Like for me, when I was that young, I wanted to be a nurse. And even when I was in high school, I thought maybe I was going to be a paramedic. Then my math skills were too horrible, and I didn't get in the military to get trained to be a paramedic. So I went down a completely different path. But I realize now that both of those things, were healing paths, that I meant to be on a healing path. And both of those things are also meant, for helping babies come into the world, both paramedics and nurses, right? And so that there's that truth within me that's been there that entire time. And when I look at my oldest, who was absolutely like loves Scooby-Doo at that age, and like we'll drive down the road and he'll comment about what somebody has on their TV in their house as we drive by. Like his ability to see the world and his perception, and like this kid is supposed to be a detective. And he's like, no, I just want to be a regular beat cop, or maybe a tank loader. Like he's in cadets and guns and military and hunting and fishing and all of that here at 13. But yeah, this kid is his perceptions of the world. Like I saw that in him, and I know it's going to take him great places, even though he refuses to do any school.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Thank you, Joanne. And thank you, Maria. Honestly, great perspectives from different points of view. I really appreciate it. I loved how you tagged on Joanne afterwards. And I loved the tidbits that you guys left at the end. Like those words, those sayings from teachers and mentors and people that you have been taught from. I really appreciate it. And I think that is such a beautiful thing to hear, is that when we come into this world, we already have that purpose. And what you guys are telling me is that you guys are here to help those reconnect to it. And that is very amazing, because it is needed in order to help raise consciousness. But I also feel like it's just needed to help those souls to come through. And when we talk about purpose, what you've both shared today makes me realize that everybody has a unique purpose that helps the collective, and they just don't realize it right now. But the way that you guys shared it, it makes me like, you guys got to connect. I'm not having any more kids, but if I were going to, Joanne, what a great way that you expressed those who are overdue. I never saw it in that way, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And that just makes me think about their purpose is huge, and they could be just scared. And even Maria, with yourself, when you talk about adult life and people are either pivoting in their career, it's because their purpose is much bigger, and they could just be in a fear-based mindset of not being able to step into what it is that they know they deep down want to do, maybe because of outside interference, or maybe that mental interference as well that we tap into. But honestly, what a great conversation. And I really just want to say thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
You're
Rashida.
welcome. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the Ultimate Human Experience podcast. You can check out both Maria and Joanne's profiles. Please connect. Please connect with them. They shared so many amazing tidbits, gems, wisdom, thoughts, experiences that these people you guys need to check in with to meet and to book an appointment, honestly. Once again, this is the Ultimate Human Experience podcast. We are out. Peace.